Stop begging for money. It's embarrassing. My son snapped when I asked for the $30,000 I'd loaned him. I just smiled, agreed, and sent the two-word text that canceled every credit card I'd been paying for. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The scent of roasting turkey and my grandmother's sweet potato pie recipe, heavy on the cinnamon and nutmeg, should have been the smell of happiness. It should have been the warm, comforting blanket settling over our family, a fragrant symbol of our blessings. But as I stood at the counter of my home, basting the bird, the familiar aroma felt different. It was a mask, a beautiful facade, trying to cover the acrid scent of simmering resentment. Thanksgiving had always been my day. I am Martha, a 68-year-old retired accountant, and I have always been the one to quietly, meticulously provide. I'd managed their childhood squabbles and now their adult anxieties. Today, I was managing this dinner, a performance of family harmony. My children were all here. James, my eldest at 35, held court in the living room. He was a vision of performative success, from his oversized gold watch to the designer sweater that cost more than my monthly groceries. He spoke loudly about his killer instincts in the market, a charismatic peacock on a stage I had apparently built for him. My daughter, Chloe, 31, lived her life through the filtered lens of her phone. She was artfully arranged on the armchair, documenting the scene instead of participating in it, a silent, beautiful ghost at her own family gathering. And then there was Mark, my youngest at 28. He sat on the edge of the sofa, a nervous satellite in James's orbit, trying to emulate his brother's flashy style. He laughed a little too loudly at James's jokes, forever seeking approval. I watched them, my heart filled with a love so deep it was a physical ache, yet tinged with a profound sadness. They saw me as Mom, a simple figure on a modest pension. They had no concept of the woman who'd spent 40 years in corporate finance, the savvy investor who had turned a small inheritance into a formidable fortune. My quiet life was a choice, but they saw it as a limitation. Today, however, was going to be different. My quiet support had curdled into a toxic entitlement, and I was an accountant after all. The numbers didn't lie. Today, I was going to gently begin cutting the financial cord. After the last of the pie, when everyone was leaning back in theatrical fullness, I knew it was time. The moment of maximum contentment. I cleared my throat. All three turned to look at me, impatient, ready for me to offer coffee. "James, honey," I began, my voice as soft as I could make it. I was looking over my finances, and I was wondering if we could talk sometime next week about a plan. For you to start paying back that personal loan I gave you. The term personal loan was a kindness. It was, in fact, a 3-year bailout of his disastrous decisions. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The warmth evaporated, replaced by an Arctic chill. Mark shifted. Chloe's phone was forgotten in her lap. James, who had been slouched, slowly sat up, his handsome face hardening. He stared at me with pure, unadulterated disbelief. He let the silence stretch, a theatrical pause. "Oh my God, Mom!" he finally snapped, his voice a whip crack. He threw his hands up, pushing his chair back with a loud scrape. "Are you serious right now? At Thanksgiving dinner?" "I just thought it was time we started a conversation, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady. "A conversation?" His voice rose, mocking. He looked around at his siblings, appealing for them to witness this outrage. "You're going to sit here, and you're going to start begging for money?" The word begging was a slap, a deliberate cruelty designed to shame me. "James, that's not what I'm doing," I said, my voice trembling despite my control. "That's exactly what you're doing," he shot back, standing up, towering over the table. "Stop it. Just stop. Stop begging for money. It's embarrassing. My gaze flickered to my other children. I was looking for an ally. I found none. Chloe looked horrified, not at his cruelty, but at the social awkwardness. She gave a tiny, imperceptible nod. It was embarrassing. I looked at Mark. He was staring at his plate, his face flushed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. But when James looked at him, he too gave a slight, jerky nod. His silence was his consent. The betrayal was absolute. A united front. In that moment, I was not their mother. I was a creditor. The pain was a sharp physical knife in my chest. But then, the accountant took over. The woman who had faced down hostile boards for 40 years. The part of me that deals not in messy emotions, but in cold, hard numbers and logical consequences. I walled the pain off, filed it away. I looked up at my son and I smiled. A calm, serene, utterly unreadable smile. "You're right, honey," I said, my voice a soft murmur. "My apologies. This was neither the time nor the place." My swift, complete capitulation disarmed him. He stared, confused. He had won, but the victory felt hollow. "Yeah, well," he mumbled, sitting back down. The crisis was over. Mom had been put in her place. Under the table, hidden by the festive cloth, I picked up my phone. My fingers were perfectly steady. I opened my messaging app to the conversation with my private banker. The message was already drafted. I typed the 2 words I'd prepared, the words I hoped never to send. Execute Protocol Phoenix. I pressed send. A small checkmark appeared. Delivered. Across the table, my children began to talk again, their voices a little too loud, papering over the ugly crack that had just appeared. They had no idea the foundation itself had just been vaporized. My smile was serene, but it was not one of defeat. It was the quiet, patient smile of an accountant who has just balanced the books. The secret to my retirement wasn't a secret. It was just a truth my children had never bothered to investigate. They saw my modest, paid-off house and sensible 10-year-old sedan, and they drew the conclusions they wanted. They saw a woman on a fixed income who probably clipped coupons. They didn't see the senior partner at one of the city's most respected accounting firms. They didn't see the woman who, in the late 90s, had a knack for spotting potential in tech startups. I hadn't just advised them. I had invested. Most fizzled. 2 did not. 2 were acquired by Microsoft in the early 2000s for sums that made headlines. My children were young then. They had no idea their mother, in her sensible suits, had just become a multi-millionaire. My husband and I made a conscious decision not to tell them. We'd seen too many children ruined by inherited wealth. We wanted them to build their own lives, but we had provided a safety net, and they had mistaken it for a hammock. It started with James. He graduated with a business degree and immediately adopted the lifestyle of a CEO. 3 years ago, he came to me in a panic. He was on the verge of financial collapse. My mother's heart, foolish and tender, went out to him. I didn't just give him a loan. I knew he'd squander it. I did something I thought was responsible. I had him approved for a supplementary credit card, linked to a private wealth account I maintained downtown. "This is for emergencies only, James," I had told him firmly, "for consolidating your existing debt. We will set up a payment plan." The payment plan never materialized. The emergency card became his primary source of income. It was a magic piece of plastic that never said no. He used it for everything: his rent, car payments, $1,000 sneakers, and extravagant vacations. He lived the life of a wealthy man, all while telling his friends he was killing it in sales. He was killing it all right. He was killing my savings. The debt had ballooned to over $30,000. My gentle reminders were met with dismissive promises of a bonus that was always just around the corner. Chloe and Mark had similar, though smaller, arrangements. An emergency card for Chloe, which she used for boutique clothing. A small line of credit for Mark, which he used to keep up with his brother. It was a secret shadow economy. Protocol Phoenix was the kill switch. It was a protocol I had established with my private banker, Anna. She had seen the statements. "You just tell me when, Martha," she'd said, her eyes full of professional sympathy. "You say the word and we shut it all down." The word had been said. My phone vibrated silently in my lap. A message from Anna. Protocol Phoenix confirmed. All supplementary cards have been deactivated. Account access is now restricted to the primary holder only. I've been waiting for this day, Martha. Enjoy your pie. A small, genuine smile touched my lips. I looked up. James was laughing, telling a loud, boastful story about a deal he'd supposedly closed. He was the king of his imaginary castle, a ruler whose entire kingdom was about to be repossessed. He was also bragging about the massive, non-refundable New Year's ski trip to Aspen he had booked for the whole family. A sprawling chalet, private lessons, the ultimate performance. "It's my last big splurge before my huge year-end bonus hits," he announced, winking at his girlfriend. He had, of course, paid the substantial initial deposit on the now-defunct credit card. He had no idea that the much larger, 5-figure final balance was due to be automatically charged in less than 12 hours. The day after Thanksgiving is a blur of consumerist frenzy. For my children, it had always been their Super Bowl, a time to leverage the magic plastic in their wallets to its absolute maximum. This year, I had canceled the magic show. I knew the first domino to fall would be James. His entire identity was built on a scaffolding of conspicuous consumption. The ticking time bomb was the Aspen trip. The 5-figure final payment was due this morning. I spent the morning in a state of quiet anticipation. I cleaned my house, clearing away the remnants of the feast. I felt lighter than I had in years. The constant, low-grade hum of anxiety was finally silent. I knew my phone would ring. I knew there would be screaming. I was not afraid. I was ready. But before my children called, an email landed in my inbox. It was from the Aspen Chalet Company. The subject line was urgent, payment declined. My heart didn't spike. It settled. The first shot had been fired. The real storm broke an hour later. I was in my garden, my hands buried in the cool soil, when the phone rang. The caller ID flashed James. I wiped my hands, took a deep breath, and answered. "What did you do?" The voice was a raw, guttural scream of pure, unadulterated rage. It was so loud, I had to pull the receiver away from my ear. I could hear him panting, his breath coming in ragged, furious gasps. "Good morning, James," I said, my voice a placid lake of calm. "Is something the matter?" "Is something the matter?" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "My cards are all declined. I just tried to buy brunch for Tiffany, and my card was declined. In front of everyone. I looked like a fool. What did you do?" Of course. The public performance was the first casualty. I could picture the scene, the trendy restaurant, the showy ordering, the final humiliating moment. A wound to his ego so profound, it was almost a physical injury. "Are you trying to ruin my life?" he screamed. "Is this because of Thanksgiving? Is this your pathetic little revenge?" I sighed, looking at the late-blooming mums in my garden. "Jamal," I said, my voice still quiet, still calm. "I'm not trying to ruin your life. On the contrary, I'm giving you exactly what you asked for." "What are you talking about?" he spat. "At Thanksgiving dinner," I explained patiently, "you were very clear. You told me to stop asking you for money. You said it was embarrassing, and you were right. It was embarrassing for me to have to subsidize the life of my 35-year-old son. So, I have stopped. There was a stunned silence. He was not prepared for calm, irrefutable logic. The credit card you were using, James, I continued, my voice gentle but with an underlying edge of steel. The one that has paid for your apartment, your car, and your $1,000 sneakers for the past 3 years is not your credit card. It is my credit card. It is linked to my bank account. It is my money. I let that sink in. Since you made it so clear that you do not want me asking you for the money you owe me, I said, delivering the final blow, I have simply taken care of the problem. I have removed my money from the equation. The debt you racked up is no longer your concern. I will absorb it. It is my problem now. I paused. You're free, James. You are finally, completely financially independent from your embarrassing old mother. Congratulations. I hung up before he could respond. The financial plague spread quickly. Later that day, Chloe called in tears. Not quiet tears, but the loud, frustrated wails of a princess whose allowance has been cut off. Mom, something is wrong with my card, she cried. I was trying to buy this gorgeous ski jacket online. It was 50% off, and it just kept saying payment method declined. I'm sure it's just a glitch, dear, I said, my voice a soothing, non-committal balm. It's not a glitch, she insisted, because then I tried to order my groceries, and that was declined too. I had to use my debit card, Mom, my actual money. Can you call the bank and fix it? I don't think there's anything to fix, Danielle, I said gently. That card was always meant for emergencies. Perhaps you've just reached your limit. Limit? She scoffed. The concept as foreign to her as quantum physics. It's never had a limit before. Well, I said with a sigh, I suppose all good things must come to an end. Then my phone buzzed again, this time with a text from my youngest Mark, and the message was pure panic. Mom, my gas card was declined at the pump. Had to leave my car there. Is everything okay? The image of my youngest son stranded at a gas station because he couldn't afford $20 worth of fuel should have broken my heart. A small part of it did, but the larger part, the accountant part that had been activated on Thanksgiving, felt a grim satisfaction. The anesthesia had worn off. For the first time, my children were feeling the real, unsubsidized pain of their own choices. Their lifestyles, their social standing, their very sense of self. It was all a sham, funded by the quiet, steady drip of my embarrassing money. I had turned off the tap, but Mark was different. His text wasn't rage, it was fear. I didn't text back. I called him. He answered on the first ring, his voice small. Mom? Where are you, Mark? I'm still at the gas station, on Route 7. I'm so sorry to bother you. I don't know what happened. Don't worry about the car, I said, my voice crisp and tactical. I'm sending an Uber to your location right now. It will be there in 10 minutes. Go home. We can sort the car out tomorrow. But the card is no longer active, Mark. None of them are. There was a long, terrible silence. I could hear him breathing, processing. He wasn't screaming like James. He wasn't wailing like Chloe. He just sounded ashamed. Okay, Mom, he whispered. Thank you. I'm sorry. He was sorry. He was the only one. I hung up, my resolve hardening. This was support, not enablement. A ride home was a solution. A blank check was a sickness. I knew the real crisis was still to come. The Aspen trip. The 5-figure time bomb. James knew his brunch card was dead. He didn't yet know his entire vacation, his grandest performance, was dead with it. He found out 5 minutes later. My phone rang again. James. This time the scream was gone. His voice was a low, terrifying growl. I just got an email, Mom, from the chalet in Aspen. Final payment declined. Yes, I imagine it was. You You did this, he whispered, the accusation shaking with a new kind of fury, the fury of public humiliation. I'm going to lose the deposit. It's thousands of dollars. You're ruining New Year's. You're ruining it for everyone. Let me be very clear, James, I said, my voice dropping to match his. I am not ruining anything. You booked a 5-figure vacation. You put the deposit on my credit card without my permission. You promised your siblings a trip you could not afford. You didn't just lie to them, James. You lied with my money. You owe me this, he roared, the control snapping. You owe us. After everything we've been through. After Dad died. You're supposed to take care of us. I have taken care of you, I said. I'm done enabling you. The trip is canceled. The Bank of Mom is closed. Permanently. We'll see about that, he snarled. You're just one person. You can't stand against all of us. We're a family. And you're going to fix this. He hung up. The threat was clear. You can't stand against all of us. He was going to rally his siblings. He was planning an ambush, a home invasion of guilt and manipulation. My stomach tightened, but I held my ground. The accountant in me knew this was the final, painful audit. A new text message lit up my phone, this time from Mark. James just called an emergency meeting at his apartment. He's freaking out about the Aspen trip. He said not to tell you. The text from Mark was a confirmation. The enemy was mobilizing. I pictured the scene at James's stylish, overpriced apartment, an apartment I was paying the rent on. The three of them gathered under the track lighting, faces a mixture of panic and fury. James, the deposed king, pacing like a caged animal, trying to rally his terrified subjects. He would be framing my actions as a betrayal, an act of petty, vindictive cruelty. He would be spinning a narrative where they were the victims, and I, the villain. But while they held their war council, I was holding my own. I sat at my desk, my laptop open. If they wanted to talk about money, we would talk about money. I wasn't just a mother. I was a senior partner. I wasn't just emotional. I was methodical. I opened my private banking portal. I opened a new blank spreadsheet. While they plotted, I prepared the evidence. I began to pull 3 years of credit card statements. My fingers flew across the keys, the clicks a steady, rhythmic drumbeat of accountability. This was my battlefield. Item: James. A $1,800. A Louis Vuitton store. The statement description he'd clearly chosen. Hardware supplies. I typed it into the cell. Item: Chloe. $200. Groceries. The charge was from a high-end designer boutique 2 towns over. Item: James. $450. Client dinner. It was at 2 a.m. on a Saturday at a nightclub. Item: Chloe. $300. Gas. The charge was from a luxury spa. The list grew, line by line, a forensic accounting of their lives. It was a secret history they believed was untraceable. My phone buzzed. A call. Mark. I put it on speaker. Mom. His voice was quiet, shaken. I'm here, Mark. Are you all right? I just left James's apartment. He took a shuddering breath. It was bad. He's lost it. The Aspen trip. The deposit is gone. He's ruined. What was his plan, Mark? I asked, my eyes fixed on the spreadsheet. He wanted us to come to your house. All 3 of us. To confront you. To demand you turn the money back on. He said we should guilt you. Mark's voice was thick with a shame so profound I could feel it through the phone. He said we should talk about how Dad would have wanted us to be taken care of. How you're not thinking clearly. The audacity, using his father's memory as a weapon. And what did you say, David? I asked, my voice gentle. I realized I'd called him by his childhood nickname, the name I used when he was small and honest. There was a long pause. I said no, he whispered. The two words were a quiet revolution. I told him he was the one who embarrassed you. I told him you had every right. And then I said, she's right, James, it's her money. The fallout, Mark explained, had been immediate. James had exploded, calling him a traitor, a coward, a mama's boy. Chloe, the loyal lieutenant, had sided with James, her face a mask of cold fury. She told Mark he was being selfish and ruining the trip. The sibling power structure, with James at its apex, had shattered. Mark had left, the sound of his brother's furious shouts following him out the door. I'm on my way to my apartment, Mom. I'm so sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for, Mark, I said. You just stay calm. Everything is being taken care of. I hung up. The alliance was broken. They were scattered, confused. It was time. I put the finishing touches on the spreadsheet. At the bottom of each of their sections, I created a final, damning summary. A total amount in a large, bold red font. I saved the file as a password-protected PDF. The subject line of the email was simple: My financial records. The body was one sentence: I believe this belongs to you. I sent it to all three of them simultaneously. A moment later, James called back, his voice a low, suspicious growl. What is this, Mom? Some kind of virus? No, dear, I said calmly. It's a document, a clearer picture of your own financial histories. The password is entitlement. I hung up and attached the file to a new email, sent it to all three, with the password in the subject line: ENTITLEMENT. I hung up the phone and imagined the scene, the three of them in their separate homes staring at their screens. I imagined the moment of dawning horror as they typed in the password, a word that was both an insult and a perfect damning diagnosis. The document that opened was not a virus. It was something far more destructive. It was a meticulously detailed, multi-year spreadsheet, a work of pure, cold accounting art. I had broken it down into 3 sections, one for each of them. Under each name was a chronological, itemized list of every single purchase they had made on my accounts for the past 3 years. Every overpriced coffee, every designer handbag, every impulsive online purchase, every fancy dinner, every vacation I had never been invited on. Next to each purchase was the date, the vendor, and the exact amount. The columns were perfectly aligned, the numbers precise to the last cent. It was a forensic accounting of their secret lives. I had included everything: Chloe's weekly $200 grocery bills that were mysteriously devoid of actual groceries, James's $1,800 purchase at a Louis Vuitton store, which he'd labeled hardware supplies. At the bottom of each section, I had created the final summary, the total amount, in large, bold red font. James, $31,428.17. Chloe, $19,000. Mark, $8,500. It was not an accusation. It was not an emotional plea. It was just data, cold, hard, and undeniable. It was the receipt for their lifestyle, a bill they had never known they were accumulating. It was the irrefutable mathematical proof of the very entitlement they had just been forced to type into their keyboards. The 2 days that followed were a symphony of silence. The frantic, angry phone calls ceased. The accusatory texts stopped. It was as if a great noisy storm had finally blown itself out, leaving behind an unnerving calm. I knew they were talking to each other, but the dynamic had irrevocably shifted. They could not argue with the spreadsheet. It was a fact as solid and immovable as a mountain. They were no longer victims of my cruelty. They were the documented perpetrators of their own quiet, long-running fraud. I spent those 2 days in profound peace. I worked in my garden, my hands in the soil. I began the quiet, necessary work of reclaiming my own home, my own life, from the emotional ghost of my children's expectations. The anger was gone, replaced by a weary, detached sadness. On Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. Not a text, not a call, a knock. I opened it. James. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't crying. His face was pale, his eyes cold and empty. "That document," he said, his voice flat. "That was low, Mom." "It was the truth, James. You think you're so smart." He tried to muster his old arrogance, but it was hollow. "You humiliated me. You ruined the trip." "You humiliated yourself with my money, James. I just provided the receipts." He stared at me for a long moment, the gears turning in his head. He was calculating, processing. The panic was gone, replaced by a chilling, reptilian focus. "Fine," he said, a strange, cold smile touching his lips. "You want to play it this way? You want to talk numbers? Let's talk numbers. You want to cut me off? Fine. I'll just get what's mine another way." "And what exactly is yours, James?" "My inheritance," he said, the word landing like a stone. "What Dad wanted me to have. You're unstable. You're vindictive. You're clearly not fit to manage the estate anymore. I don't think you're fit to manage anything." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a threat. He smiled, a cold, empty gesture. "My lawyer will be in touch, Martha." He called me Martha, not Mom, Martha. The word hung in the air long after he turned and walked away. The escalation was terrifying. He was climbing the ladder from a family spat to a legal war. My hands were shaking. The accountant was gone, and for a moment, the 68-year-old widow was back. He was threatening to take me to court, to claim I was unfit. I shut the door, my heart hammering. I did not wait. I did not panic. I acted. I picked up the phone and called Anna, my banker, my wealth manager, and the executor of my husband's estate. "He's threatening to contest the will, Anna," I said, my voice tight. "He's claiming I'm unfit." Anna, ever the professional, didn't sigh. She processed. "He's bluffing, Martha. The estate was settled years ago. Your personal fortune is entirely, irrevocably yours. He has no claim. He sounded serious, Anna. He said he was getting a lawyer." "He can file," Anna said, her voice sharpening. "He can file for a competency hearing. It's a public document. He can't win, but he can make it public. He can make it ugly. He can try to humiliate you. Public humiliation. That was his goal. If he couldn't have my money, he would destroy my name." I hung up, the weight of it settling on me. This was his final, cruelest move. To drag our private pain into a public courtroom. An hour later, there was another knock. Softer this time. I opened the door, my body tense, expecting James again, or perhaps a furious Chloe. It was Mark. He stood on the welcome mat, his shoulders slumped. He wasn't empty like James. He was full of a terrible, crushing shame. He was holding a small, crumpled paper grocery bag. "Mom," he whispered, and his voice broke. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything." He looked at the spreadsheet printout in his other hand. I knew it was bad. I didn't know. I had no idea. What I took from you. What we took." He looked up, and his eyes were red. "I'm so sorry." I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He held up the small paper bag. I just got paid for my part-time job. I don't have $8,500. But I brought this." He pulled out a small bag of coffee beans. I can make coffee." It was such a small thing. A simple domestic offer. It wasn't a grand promise. It was a quiet, humble gesture of service. It was the first time in his adult life he had offered to provide something for me, rather than the other way around. It was the beginning of a shift. A single tear, the first one I had allowed myself to shed, rolled down my cheek. Not a tear of sadness, a tear of hope. "I would love that, sweetheart," I whispered. I let him in. As he was fumbling with the coffee filter in my kitchen, my phone rang. Chloe. I looked at Mark. He nodded. I put it on speaker. "Mark?" Chloe's voice was sharp, frantic. "Mark, where are you? Are you at her house? You need to leave. Right now. James is serious. We're meeting the lawyer tomorrow morning. He's filing the papers. You need to be with us, Mark. We're a family." Mark stood frozen, the coffee scoop in his hand. He looked at me, at the phone, and took a deep breath. "No, Chloe," he said, his voice shaking but clear. "I'm not. You're wrong. What you and James, what you did at Thanksgiving, it was wrong. I'm with Mom." "You're a fool," she shrieked. "You're choosing her. She's cut us off. She stole our money. We're getting what we're owed." She hung up, and Mark looked at me, his face pale. "Mom, what does she mean, what we're owed?" "What we're owed?" Chloe's words echoed in the quiet kitchen. Mark looked at me, his eyes wide with a new, dawning confusion. She sounds like James. They think you stole something from them. What are they talking about?" "They are talking," I said, my voice heavy, "about your father's will." I walked out of the kitchen, down the hall to the small study where my husband David had kept his papers. Mark followed me. I went to the filing cabinet, the same one I'd used for decades to manage corporate accounts worth hundreds of millions, and opened the bottom drawer. I pulled out a thick, leather-bound portfolio, an artifact. "Your father and I made 2 wills," I said, placing it on the desk. "The first one was written right after you were all born. It was simple. It split everything 4 ways." I opened the portfolio. Inside was another, slimmer document. "This is the second one," I said. "We wrote it 5 years ago, right after James's emergencies started, right after I had to pay off his second high-interest loan." I slid the document across the desk to Mark. "We saw what was happening, Mark. We saw the entitlement, the money. It was poisoning you. We wanted to protect you. From it. And from yourselves." Mark's hands trembled as he picked it up. He read the first page. His face went white. This leaves everything to you," he whispered. "In a trust?" "A discretionary trust," I confirmed. "I'm the sole trustee. Your father and I agreed. As long as I am alive, I have sole discretion over all assets. There is no estate for them to inherit. Not yet. There is nothing for James or Chloe to contest." "So, his threat is empty," Mark breathed, a wave of relief washing over him. "Not entirely," I said. I pointed to the last page. "Read the final clause. Your father insisted on it." Mark read the paragraph aloud, his voice barely a whisper. "Should any named beneficiary of this trust, namely James, Chloe, or Mark, formally contest this will or file any legal action against the trustee, their share of this trust, upon the trustee's death, is immediately and irrevocably nullified and redistributed equally among the non-contesting beneficiaries." He looked up at me, the horror dawning. "Oh my God," he said. "If James files that lawsuit tomorrow, he gets nothing. Ever." "He gets nothing," I confirmed. "And if Chloe joins him, she gets nothing." "We have to tell them," Mark said, scrambling for his phone. "We have to stop them." "No," I said, putting my hand on his. "They won't believe you. They'll think it's a trick. They have to see it." Right on cue, a car door slammed outside, then another. Headlights washed across the study wall. A moment later, the doorbell rang. not a knock. An insistent, angry ringing. I looked at Mark. He was holding the will. "Bring it," I said. We walked to the front door. I opened it. James and Chloe stood on the porch, silhouetted against the night. James had a thin, vicious smile on his face. Chloe looked nervous but resolute. "Mark!" James snapped, his eyes flashing. "Get away from her. We're here to talk, Mom. Our lawyer is on his way. This is your last chance. Turn the cards back on." "He shouldn't bother," I said, my voice as cold as the night air. "Mark, show them." Mark held up the will. Chloe snatched it from his hand. She started to read, her eyes scanning the page, her face twisting in confusion, then collapsing in horror as she reached the final clause. "What?" James said, grabbing the paper from her. "What is it?" He read it. The blood drained from his face. That's not real," he stammered. "You forged it. You bitch, you forged it." "It's real, James," Chloe whispered, her voice dead. "It's notarized. Oh my God, James, it's real." James looked from the paper, to me, to Chloe. The realization that his ultimate weapon was not just empty, but a self-destruct button, broke something inside him. The cold calculation shattered, replaced by a pure primal rage. "You!" he screamed, his face contorting. "You stole from us. You always planned this. You stole Dad's money." "I protected it," I yelled back, my own control finally snapping. I'll tell everyone," he sputtered, his mind racing for a new weapon. "I'll tell the whole family what you did. I'll tell them how you're cutting us off, how you're unstable, how you're destroying this family." He fumbled for his phone, his thumb jabbing at the screen. He held it up, the camera lens glaring at me. He pressed record. "Smile for the camera, Mom," he snarled. "You're about to go viral." The red light on his phone glowed in the darkness. James's hand was shaking, but his eyes were filled with a desperate, venomous triumph. He had his new weapon. Public shame. "Say it again, Mom," he taunted, pushing the phone closer to my face. "Tell everyone how you're cutting off your own children. Tell them how you're hoarding Dad's money." Chloe stood behind him, a ghost, her face pale and shattered. She knew the will was real. She knew this was a futile, pyrrhic attack. Mark stepped slightly in front of me. "James, stop it. You don't know what you're doing." "Get out of the way, Mark." James shoved him, but Mark held his ground. I put my hand on my youngest son's shoulder and gently moved him aside. I looked directly into the camera lens, directly at my eldest son. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was the cold, hard clarity of the final column on a ledger. "Go ahead, James," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Record it. Tell them everything." His smirk wavered. This wasn't the reaction he wanted. "What?" "Tell them," I insisted. "Tell them how I paid your rent for 3 years. Tell them about the $31,428.17 you spent. Tell them about the $1,800 you spent on hardware supplies at Louis Vuitton. Tell them about the Aspen trip you couldn't afford but promised to everyone. Tell them how you called me embarrassing for asking about a loan I gave you." I took a step closer. "You put that video online, James. You tell your story. And then I'll show them my story. I'll show them the spreadsheet. I'll show them this will. I will show them every receipt, every lie, every date. And we will let the family and the whole world decide who is unstable. Who do you think they'll believe?" The phone in his hand did not waver, but the light in his eyes died. The confidence, the rage, the self-righteousness, it all drained away, leaving nothing behind. Just a hollowed-out man of 35, a boy who had built his entire life on a foundation of lies and my money. He looked at the phone, then at me. His face crumpled. I have nothing." he whispered. It wasn't an apology. It was a statement of fact. You never did, James, I said, my voice softening, the anger giving way to a vast, weary sadness. That was the problem. You had my things. Now, you have your own. You have your independence. It's what you demanded at Thanksgiving. He lowered the phone. His hand dropped to his side. He didn't say another word. He just stared at me. His mother, the woman he had tried to break, who was, in the end, just a mirror reflecting his own ruin. He turned, slowly, and walked off the porch. James, Chloe whispered, her voice breaking. James, wait. He didn't stop. He got in his car, the car I had paid for, and drove away. Chloe stood there for a moment, tears streaming down her face. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Mom, go home, Chloe, I said. It wasn't unkind. It was just final. She flinched, then nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. She walked to her own car and left. The street was silent. The confrontation was over. I turned and walked back into my house. Mark was still standing in the entryway, the will still clutched in his hand. The silence of the house was huge, profound. It was the sound of a storm that had finally passed. Mark looked at the coffee machine in the kitchen. He looked at me. I'll get the mugs, he said. I nodded and went to the kitchen table, the same table where, just days before, my family had shattered. The lingering scent of cinnamon and nutmeg was gone. Now, there was just the rich, dark smell of fresh brewed coffee. Mark placed a mug in front of me. His hand was steady. He sat down across from me, not as a child asking for something, but as a man, offering it. He hadn't just brought coffee. He'd brought his $8,500 spreadsheet with handwritten notes in the margin, a payment plan. The books were finally balanced. I picked up the mug and took a sip. It was the best cup of coffee I had ever tasted. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here